This podcast is a member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
This is Luke Gygax. Having trouble with the antithesis of wheel? Don't worry, you've come to the right place. You're listening to Save or Die.
You burst through the door. You find a small room filled with gold and jewels and a red dragon. He starts to breathe. Save or die! Like a 68 Impala. AC doesn't matter. Critical damage from my warhammer. I told the big two against every single time that goes by the force of my mighty blow. I lay 'em low, yes I lay 'em low.
Welcome to the Save or Die podcast, a podcast about classic Dungeons and Dragons.
Bring on your goblin holes and band of oaks. All kings, zombies, and kabobs. And oh no, no troll, don't slow me down, oh no. Don't dig up the issues.
Hello, folks. It's Save or Die, episode 126.
Yeah.
Da-da-da.
Yeah, mule. Yeah.
And joining you is the Helm of Telepathy that only works with cats, DM Mike. And also in the Magic Cabinet, we have a Wand of Wonder herself, DM Liz.
Hello.
And the Deck of Many Things over in the corner, DM Jim.
I will grant you wishes and then grant you reasons to burn the wishes.
And Mead will now draw 13 cards at once. Again. We're here to talk about an obscure TSR campaign world created for Imagine Magazine back in the mid-'80s called Pelinore. It was designed for both Classic and AD&D, so we're going to feel it's open season to talk about it for Classic D&D.
And not hold it against Roll for Initiative if they also cover it later.
Yeah, that's fine. Actually, I think they already covered it, but whatever. In fact, thinking about it, they covered the Kelry compilation. There is a huge amount of fan material for Pelinore, something like 260 pages. But we're just going to concentrate on what was actually published in Imagine Magazine from issues 16 to 30, which is like April of 84 to October 85, I think.
So vintage Pelinore.
Yeah. Quote unquote canonical Pelinore.
Canon.
Canonical. Yeah, I know. I don't often get to use the word canonical when it comes to classic D&D, so I don't know. Get that in while we can. But first...
Get down, get down, get down, get down.
The Save or Die email hot tub time machine.
Come here, you scrumptious little beauty.
Here I go once again with the email. Every week I hope that it's from a female. Oh man!
Yes.
Nothing. No. Do you have an email?
Oddly enough, we do have emails, yes.
All right.
Okie dokie. Well, our first email is from Robin Irwin. And Robin writes, Dear Sodcasters, in December of 1980, Tom Moldvay wrote the following in his foreword to the D&D Basic Rules. I was busy rescuing the captured maiden when the dragon showed up. 50 feet of scaled terror glared down at us with smoldering red eyes. In the winter of 1981, those words captured the imagination of a lonely sixth grader who had recently changed schools. Who might have been that lonely kid? You guessed it, that sixth grader was me. Thank you, Save or Die, for you have been especially helpful in reeling me back in time, back to my first exposure to that wonderful book and that incredibly fantastic game.
Aww.
Welcome.
Working as intended then, right?
Yeah. So, on that account, I would respectfully ask you to please consider discussing the creative elements of the Moldvay Basic Rules, such as the choice of font, the selection and arrangement of topics, the art, and especially the cover piece by Errol Otis. Further, one might have read about Gary's Appendix N on a variety of blog posts out there, but I have never had the pleasure to read about the basic rulebook's page B62, filled with a slew of inspirational source material and authors' names.
Good
Finally,
point.
in the basic rulebook's acknowledgments on page B2, Mr. Moldvay refers to thousands of letters mailed to TSR. Does anyone remember writing to TSR when they were young? I do. Were they answered? Mine was. If there has already been a review of the Moldvay set by Save or Die, then please accept my humble apologies. Your friend, Robin Irwin. P.S. It was a terrific pleasure meeting all of you in person at the North Texas RPG Con this year. I promise that I will do my best to bring my wife along next year. I will most certainly encourage her to game with us. Thank you once again. That is
Sweet.
cool, and I would very much like to meet your wife, Robin. So if you
Indeed.
can get her to come, that would be awesome.
What a nice
I mean,
letter.
I think we did cover the Moldvay set, but it was way back, like before issue 20 or something like that. It was long, long ago.
And I don't think we really covered the B62 listings of source material, etc. that was in there.
No, it would be interesting to compare it to the Gygax Appendix N to see where they differed.
I'd completely forgotten about it when we got this letter. I looked it up, and I couldn't believe the stuff that was in there. My brother ran his first D&D campaign based off of Robert Asperin's Another Fine Myth, and I'm looking at it right there on the list. That's where he got the idea.
Oh, cool. I remember reading those books back in the day.
Yeah.
I've still got a few of the old not the hardbacks, the paperbacks. I think I've kept the first 5 books maybe of the series.
That's perfect.
I mean, we were teenagers, but we were into it like those kids in Stranger Things, so we didn't know any difference, and none of us had read that book, so we just show up to play D&D, and there are interdimensional imps popping technological crossbow bolts at all the magic users, including me. And we thought my brother was the coolest DM ever. But anyway, it's a good list. It's got a lot of stuff on there, including young adult fantasy books that aren't obviously in Appendix N.
That would be cool. Well, even though we've already covered it, if there's interest, we could always cover it again. So anyone out there who agrees with Robin, write in or call in, let us know. And we could cover it again. Have a retro or something.
Moldvay Revisited.
Because that was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
You guys have been doing this a long time.
It doesn't seem like we've been doing it that long. It feels like maybe we've been doing this for 3 years tops. It doesn't feel like it's been longer than that to me.
Yeah, but we started in 2010. Oh, wow.
You're very good. You podcast a long time. You're very good.
Yeah. And we're still alive to tell the tale. So anyway.
Okay. Our next email is from Carl. And Carl says, Mike!
What?
My man Mike!
What?
I am in complete 100% agreement with you about scale creep. I hate buying a cool new character figure just to find out it's ogre size next to my minis.
Word.
I hadn't considered 3D printing minis as a way of getting true 25mm figures again. But now I'm excited. Thanks for the show.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's had some grumbling about creep. And I happened to be looking through a catalog a day or two ago and saw people starting to sell 32mm figs. Like, really? Liz may have a point, though.
I was going to say, personally, I think we're all getting older. It's getting harder for us to see those tiny little details when we're trying to paint our minis, and so minis are slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger as our eyes fail us.
Well, I have a question for you two.
Story.
I have a related question for you two. Back in the day, early 80s, Grenadier or Ralpartha?
Both.
If you had to pick one, your preference was?
Oh, probably Ralpartha. I mean, I liked my Grenadiers, but Grenadier could not do up a decent female figure to save their life.
They could not. They were all men with breasts.
And Ralparthas were really nice, but they were kind of smaller and thinner, so we tended to use those as elves.
So Liz,
the men, anyway.
Which one?
I agreed. Ralpartha. It's like it was hard to find. I mean, even Ralpartha minis. They weren't great for females either, but they were better than Grenadier, and that tended to be what I was always trying to find was a decent female mini for myself.
Well, that makes perfect sense given your scale creep, hatred, because even though Grenadier and Ralpartha were both basically true 25s, I liked Grenadier better because the bigger heads and weapons appealed to me as a cartoonist next to the Ralpartha, and those Ralpartha guys were obsessed with true 25 everything, like the hands holding the sword are going to be true to scale with a 25mm figure.
Mm-hmm. Now, when Julie Guthrie came on the scene with Grenadier and did females, those rocked. But until she showed up, it was basically a man's head with long hair on a woman's body or something.
Sometimes even the body wasn't that great, unless you were getting some of those slave girl figure sets that I'm sure many of you know about, whether you want to admit it or not.
Don't shut up.
They were They were very.
They were quite. They were so very, they were quite. Anyway, glad we were able to help out, Carl.
Woohoo! Yeah, quite frankly, it had not occurred to me either that you could take the 3D, program and scale it down to 25. It's like, of course you can. Duh!
It had just occurred to me, and I was just kind of talking with my fingers crossed, going, oh, maybe, but yes. And I'm still waiting for Chase to print out those lizard folk for us. We need to get a 3D printer of our own sometime. One of these days.
Join the revolution.
Yeah.
Of course, then the question becomes, where do we put it?
The guest bedroom.
Yeah.
Because everything else is going in there.
Our guests will love that.
Oh, sure.
Stay for a weekend, print your own 3D minis while you're here.
Yeah, and enjoy the lovely sounds as it prints away like a machine gun.
You're just start running a bed and 3D breakfast.
The next morning you get a mini of you in your bed. Because we have webcams. That's not skeevy at all.
So anyway,
we have a voicemail.
Yeah, voicemail. Let's go to voicemail.
Hey, Masters of Sun. This is DM Appleseed. I'm a long-time listener, and finally had a question to go ahead and post to you guys. First of all, I have to say I have not had so much experience with playing much of the older editions, but I am one of those anomalies that's actually had most of their role-playing experience playing Arduin. So, yeah, we do exist. We are out there. And so if you have anybody like me, is it time to go ahead and revisit the whole idea of really looking to Arduin and crazy monsters and, yes, even myths and everything that entails. I'd love to go ahead and speak on that for you guys. But the question I have, actually, is I've experienced a lot of people who it's hard to kind of keep a group where you can kind of please everybody, and I guess that's just inherent in what you're doing. But how do you balance the whole role-playing aspect along with hack and slash so that you have a healthy dose of both? It seems like for some people, they're really looking for a lot of role-playing in their game, and sometimes that's kind of hard to produce, especially on the fly. And some people just want to bust down some doors and kill some monsters. So I don't know if you guys have any trouble, you had any experiences with that, and what kind of solutions you might have with that. All right, well, thank you very much, and you guys keep on doing what you're doing. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, DM Appleseed. Yeah, I mean, I look at the history of role-playing and, whether it's in Playing at the World or other works, they talk about, when Arduin came out, it was really popular on the West Coast. So, by dint, there has to be people out there who started with it. That would be really interesting. As for the question, wow, that's one of those. I think you have to know your group. I mean, you have to, and there's no straight answer, I don't think, because you're going to have players who either really like the role playing or who just want to kill stuff and roll dice. I mean, you have to kind of couch that to however they want to play, and sometimes that's hard, like at a con or something. What do y'all think?
Well, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer to that. If you have a group of players where you have a mix, obviously you're going to have to try and give a little bit of both to try and keep everyone happy. Yeah, I mean,
if you're starting off with a new group, I would think it would probably behoove you to try to either do an adventure half and half or make it more hack and slash than role play, because I've had the experience, my experience anyway, is that role players will tolerate a little initial hack and slash, but if you try to shoehorn hack and slashers into role playing, they get annoyed and less tolerant. What do you think, Jim?
What's interesting to me about the question is how it's pertinent to 2016, because with a lot of the games, my personal experience is running games at a game store where there's a core group that's supposed to show up, but it's very laissez-faire. Some people don't show up some games, and it's hard. I took it as a sign when I ran the initial MCC playtest. After about a year and a half of the so-called campaign, it finally, some role-playing started to happen. And that's the point where I'm like, okay, now it's really a campaign. It's not just Jim showing up going, here's tonight's adventure, go be murder hobos, which is, my group kind of tilted that way. But then this emergent role-playing happened on its own, and I paid attention to it. I've also run into it when you don't want it. Like when you're doing a tournament at a con game, I accidentally wrote a room that was kind of a steal from that Star Trek episode where they go underground on the planet and there are these globes with old gods in them, and they get possessed by them. I wrote
Sargon is here.
Yeah, never fear, Sargon is here. I wrote a dungeon room like that, and it ground the whole tournament to a halt, because as soon as 3 players got possessed, they started arguing with the rest of the table, trying to get people to sides, and it went on for like hours. The store was trying to close, and they were still arguing, and I'm like, okay, I accidentally created emergent role playing there. I don't want to do that in a tournament, but now I know what to do when I do want to have it. Get some role-playing going in the middle of a dungeon.
Mm-hmm. So, don't know how helpful that was, Appleseed, but...
Yeah, I do think I would agree with you, though, about if you have the mix, you should lead with the hack and slash and introduce the role-play afterwards. I do know that sometimes, we've been in groups where when it leads with a role-playing scenario that's very combat light, you can see the hack and slashers around the table, very obviously getting bored. They're pulling out the phones, they're texting, they're looking, checking Facebook, and they probably wonder, is there going to be any fighting at all?
Come on, it's been over an hour and I haven't set anything on fire yet.
That's right. Yep. So I do think there is a valid point that the role players are going to be more patient, and they can live with starting off with a fight and getting into well, this was why the fight happened, and now you realize that something's going on. If you want to role play, here is your opportunity. But yeah, I think it's really one of those, it depends on the makeup of your group, and it's going to be a different response, for every single group, depending on your ratio and how well people know each other.
And I've experienced if you're throwing together a one-shot at a con or something, you really ought to lean toward hack and slash, because that's kind of what a lot of people expect at cons, in my experience. Kind of playing off what Jim was saying about, store games.
Oh, I was going to say also, I think I've mentioned this in a previous episode before talking about con games, unless you're a very, outgoing person or a theater major, it's hard for people to jump into role-playing if you're sitting at a convention game or a store demo game with a bunch of people you don't know. I think it's difficult to want to, role-play with strangers.
Unless you're Michael Curtis.
I know it's difficult for me. If I don't know anyone at the table, I'm reluctant to, just jump right into role-playing my character. I'm very tentative to start off with.
Well, everybody has, my personal preference as a judge and a DM is about one combat an hour. If I can get through 3 or 4 hours and I averaged one combat an hour, I think I did my job. But that's just me.
Okay. Hope that answers things. And if anyone wants to write an email, where would they send it? Jim.
SaveOrDiePodcast@gmail.com.
Or send us a voicemail at 940-536-3763. And on that note, somebody on September 7th sent us a voicemail, but Google Voicemail ate it. So we apologize, and if you're hearing this, please give us another call with the question, and hopefully we can have that on the air in the future. And barring anything else, we will head into our oh-so-important commercial break, and then go into Top 5.
Kenner presents new alien action figure.
Aliens flow! Quick, shut the airlock! The alien's locked out now! He got through! Give up! Alien can't be beat! We'll zap him with the light! Darn, he'll destroy the spaceship! We've lost! Better find another ship! Let's try the kitchen! Another triumph for Alien!
Alien action figure, new from Kenner. And now, back to Dungeons and Dragons.
The Save or Die Top 5. In 5, 4, 3, 2.
The World of Pelinore. That's with an E. I keep forgetting when I type it. I always put Pelinore with an end at R, but anyway, this was a campaign world designed in Imagine Magazine, TSR's British gaming mag from the 1980s. It canceled in number 30, I think. But anyway, starting in issue 16, they decided to base all their adventures and stuff from the magazine into this new world. And it was quite interesting. It was a bit low-powered compared to other campaign worlds for TSR, especially Forgotten Realms. There aren't any really hugely high-level people in this game, in this campaign world. And it had a particularly British feel to it, I think. But we'll talk about that in the top 5. And we're going to start with...
Number 5.
Liz.
Yay!
You're welcome.
Oh, wow. I don't know what to say. Okay. So in no particular order, I guess I will start off with one of the things that I was kind of impressed by, their system of justice that they talk about at one point throughout the, various.
Yeah, it was emphasizing there's a main city that things are based around called the City League, and everything just kind of expands from there.
Yeah, and one of the articles just is all talking only about the various courts of justice, etc., etc. It's a much more streamlined approach than the head-splitting rules and explanations offered in that gazetteer. Was it Keramikos that
think
had
so.
the labyrinthine, just on and on and on about, the courts and, going through them. Pelinore, it's, individual tables, the steps from capture to arrest to sentencing, they are broken down into individual tables, and they can be used either in whole or only in part, depending on what makes sense for one's personal campaign setting. It's super modular. You can easily tweak it. If I had to choose between using the Keramikos rules of the justice system and Pelinore would win hands down. It's just super awesome. I thought they did a really good job.
And emails pour in.
Woo!
Well, I mean, it was really sweet system that anticipates like modern 21st century game mechanics, because those tables come with a flow chart too. I was really sharp.
Yeah. Well, what's your number 5, Jim?
That was it. So, what's your number 5? No, it was my number 3, but that's okay. My number 5 is the NPC character class, free man or free woman. This is a brilliant little thing. I've seen versions of it in other settings, but this one was just nice and straightforward and rock solid. It's a NPC character class, free man or free woman, for the NPCs in this town, so that the PCs don't roll over a bunch of level 0s and level 1s. I mean, they can level in this class as high as the player characters, and they get at least that club as a D6 weapon, and all the benefits and hit points of being, level 4 or 5 or 6, so that the players can't just go run roughshod over every tavern keeper.
Okay.
It's very nicely done.
Well, that's very interesting, because my 5 is the Freeman class, and I don't like it. I can salute their intent. Because, like they said in the article, they didn't want to have, everybody a fighter, magic user, cleric, thief. But the way they did it with the XP, the level advancement, when you reach, I think it was like 8th or 9th level, you're now a noble, no longer a bureaucrat. It felt really artificial to me. So I can give them a salute for that, but I just didn't like it.
So your problem was the non-setting upward mobility of class.
Yeah, because most nobles would be fighters in my, from my medieval study. I mean, that's kind of a given. That's part of what nobility was for. It was a local warrior, commander. The guy who started as a first level freeman clerk, working up to being a noble. I mean, that's very American, but it's not very medieval. So
on the other hand, I wouldn't be using it in that way. As far as these NPCs leveling up, I would be basically using the Freeman level as just a shorthand way of telling me, okay, this guy is upper middle class. This guy is just a well-to-do merchant, but he doesn't have just oodles of influence.
So more of a shorthand of social level. Okay.
Right. I wouldn't have them leveling up throughout a game campaign and,
Okay.
Bartles, who was a level 2 freeman when we started, now he's a level 10 for no apparent reason, and we have to bow to him,
Yeah, but they give experience point award suggestions and stuff, so obviously they did intend on people XPing up.
I'd totally ignore that.
Well, yeah, but...
I guess I looked at it as a way, as the player characters, you're introduced to the guy who owns the biggest trading company in town. And you're like, oh, okay, we can take him. Well, his name is Wilson Fisk. Oh, wait. Wait a minute. Maybe we don't want to do this.
Not Fisk.
Again, the Kingman.
Otherwise known as Fisk of Fury.
What level do you think this NPC is? I don't know. Get a stick and hit him. See how hard he is to hit.
Yeah. The stick shattered. I think maybe we better run.
So, Anyway, that's my opinion. And in that circumstance, I would have had Mr. Fisk be a retired adventurer and have him like 8th level or 10th level fighter or something, or a monk or whatever. A mystic, I suppose. But anyway, that's my 5, so.
Number 4.
Liz?
Okay, number 4. Okay, this one's kind of nitpicky, but it just bothered me. One of the first articles, basically it's covering the City League, the various shops and, places of note. There is an elven character named Gold Meadow. One of her characteristics given for the character is that she smells wonderful. What? What is this even?
Well, that's definitely not medieval. If you want to have a historical objection, everybody smelled like shit.
Raise your hand if you're sure.
First, and most importantly, nobody's character should be going around smelling the NPCs. It's rude, and I don't care if your character has a charisma of 6. After getting their ass kicked for doing it, they will either learn and stop, or they will be dead. And second, it is just so stereotypical. Women smell nice and flowery, while guys are just lucky to remember to bathe every few days.
Wow, this really pushed your buttons, didn't it?
It did. I was not expecting it to, but it just really bugged me. It's like she smells wonderful. Really.
And it doesn't even say what she smells like. It's just wonderful.
Wonderful. So I started looking, and the only male characters I could find that were ever described by smell, it was never in a good way. So again, stereotypical, the male characters smell like crap, and Gold Meadow, the female elf, smells wonderful.
Liz, you fight the power. You go, girl.
Yeah!
You're feminaziing my D&D.
Who's going to be smelling the NPCs? I mean, that's really what is like.
Yeah.
Who does that? I don't do that.
Reminds me of that section from the Gamers movie when the thief was taking the guy's purse, then his sword. I want to take his pants. Why do you want to take his pants? Well, I don't want him. I just want to see if I can take him. And he rolls his dice and crits, and then he's got the guy's pants. And yeah.
So that was my number 4.
Okay, Jim.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think I need a minute after that. I don't know. Let's see what I wrote it down, so I must have it here. God, this is going to sound so completely lame. I'm following Liz. My number 4 was that I liked how the place names and surnames were nicely influenced by Middle English, with even some Welsh, Gaelic, and Norman references. All right, get the hell out of this podcast, Wampler.
No, I'm firmly behind that. It's not.
See, you guys are being, You're being serious, you're being scholarly, that's awesome. I'm just getting upset because somebody smells good.
No, but I'm more interested in what you're saying than what I have to say. But, not to step on your turf, Mike, but like where there was a place called The Wind, and it's Wind with a Y, and character names like Thadric Burwright. You're like, okay, that guy, that's Middle English, Lord Morven de Gley. As soon as you see de Gley, you go, okay, that's Norman.
Mm-hmm. Instead of the land of Zigboogly-Doo in the forest of Fernarganarg, and just kind of. I mean, if that works for you, that's great. But especially when you get a campaign setting and that's all the naming, conventions, everything runs together. At least for me, and it's like it's not memorable. Forgotten Realms. Anyway, sorry, Ed Greenwood. Sorry. Anyway, well, getting back to Liz's first comment. Oh, are you finished with your 4? Or?
Yes. Hey, But let me try and practice something Glenn was good at that I suck at. So how about you, Mike? What's your number? What's your number 4?
That's my number 4. My number 4, getting back to the law system, I particularly liked this one, Trial by Monster.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
Go out there, and if you can fight 3 monsters thrown at you, not at once, 3 different sets of battles, not only are you set free, but the prosecutor of your case is thrown to the 4th monster.
Ta-da!
That's pretty awesome. I like that. Not really historical, but who cares? It's fun.
So that's not really trial by combat. That's more like trial by XP gain.
Well, trial by monster, yeah. Oh, I mean, letting you go free is fine, but, the whole thing of, and we'll throw the prosecutor to the next monster is just, that's the cherry on top as far as I'm concerned. So, I really like that.
Number 3.
Liz?
Okay.
3.
Number 3. All right. My number 3 is going to be the Weapon Designers Workshop. This was a...
Oh, yeah!
This was a setting in the little area of the league, and on the surface, it just seems like a regular little, place where you can get different weapons. However, you start reading the description, and I got the distinct impression that this was an extremely thinly veiled dig at Games Workshop. It says, almost completely lacking in flair. They produce straightforward, reliable weapons at a sensible price. Just don't ask for extras, that's all. The group is entirely male and has been so since records were first kept. Periodically, as if answering some unheard call, a young male elf will arrive at the shop to work his apprenticeship, and an older elf will move on to new adventures.
I suppose it could be Game Designers Workshop, but yeah, especially that last bit seems to smack of Games Workshop. Well, the head of Imagine Magazine, Don Turnbull, had a interesting relationship with Games Workshop and particularly White Dwarf Magazine. So that may not be completely innocent.
I just got a very distinct impression of we're being snarky. It's like, wow, this is kind of awesome.
Okay. Jim?
That must have been a satire of old Games Workshop because they said sturdy, reasonably priced products. This was the early 80s, kids.
Yeah, this was pre-Warhammer, so yeah.
My number 3 is a particular article that's called Pablo Fanque's Fair. And it's actually very short, but it's just for your Pelinore setting, but because there are roving trooper performers, they can show up anywhere. It's just a bunch of NPCs and a couple of story plotline suggestions for how to use them, and it immediately, because I'm a Game of Thrones fan, reminded me of that scene where they took Aya to see the performers, and she started seeing satirical versions of the prior season's events in Game of Thrones. So this would be perfect for that. Besides a bunch of kind of half carny, half actor, performer, juggler, rubber man, whatever NPCs to intrigue and confound the players, you could actually use this as a substitute for the cliched tavern as a way to give them, adventure hooks.
Or for that matter, if they're doing adventures that are known, say they completed defeating the Great Orc leader, one eye or something, and it's known in the area, you could have them doing a satirical play of it.
Right, and we were talking about emergent role play earlier. Can you imagine a group of people, as soon as they go through a dungeon, they've got to go see the fictionalized version of it later.
Yeah, and it'll would be shorthand to let the players know how their PCs are viewed in the region. So
yeah, if they're well liked, then it'll be complimentary. If they're
Yeah.
not, then
lighthearted and fun, but yeah.
I mean, if you're like real murder hobo, I need the next greatest interdimensional trap for my players mindset, this doesn't make any sense. But like, it's emblematic of what you said at the top of the episode. A lot of these things are very low key, but they're entirely lovely, and a crafty DM could use them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My third is the idea given in there for the world heart. Now, to explain, Pelinore is a flat world. It's described like a dinner plate, with the very edges being rather the realms of chaos, and law more to the center. The world heart is supposed to be the very center of the world of Pelinore, the plate, but nobody really knows where it is. But a lot of people take it as kind of like a walkabout in the Australian terms. They're on spiritual journeys of self-discovery to try to find the world heart, because once you find that, it's supposed to be perfect harmony in yourself and with others. And it gives a good rationale for the use of the mystic class, the sort of the classic D&D's monk. And I really liked that, and the whole cosmology behind the edges are chaos. That way, there's the lands of law, but they're surrounded by chaos. And you have kind of a order entropy thing going on. So I really like that.
To magnify your point, what that flat world map, imagine that in the center of the prime material plane in Gary's big diagram of all the dimensions and other planes. That it's just like, okay, this world should be flat. It fits perfectly.
Well, I don't know if either of you ever read Diane Duane's Young Wizards series, starting with So You Want to Be a Wizard? It was for young adults. Yeah, well, this is mentioned towards the end of the first book as well. World Heart reminds me very much of the concept of Time Heart in the Wizards books. Basically, that spiritual place where you're only able to go in dreams, and it's where the true versions, the best loved, the truest versions of everything exist in that spiritual place.
Sort of iconic.
Right. Wizards, if they're fortunate, they get to briefly visit Time Heart sometimes in their dreams, and, best loved things, people, places that are, quote unquote, dead and gone in the physical reality that they live in, live on there, and no one is ever truly gone.
Yes, but what if you're a perfect asshole?
Then they will be perfect right there.
Liz, is it close enough that you think it's an intentional homage?
I don't know. I mean, I know the Young Wizards books began 3 years earlier, before the Pelinore
stuff. 81? 80,
yeah,
81?
It's possible that it is an homage, but I don't know. I like to think that it is. I want to think, oh, they read that. That is so awesome, because that's what I think of. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It reminds me of Time Heart, and it made me all warm and fuzzy inside when I read that.
I didn't read it because I was never a young adult.
Bah humbug!
Number 2.
Okay, Liz, over to your 2.
Okay, number 2. All right. I think this is going to be another place where Mike disagrees with somebody's opinion on something in Pelinore.
Bah.
Oh, it's a throwdown. Who ends up on the couch tonight?
Yeah.
Me. There's no contest, me.
Okay. I feel like there seems to me to be a disparity between Imagine Magazine's initial statement that Pelinore is to be a general overview, easily inserted into one's own campaign world, And then you have the nearly immediate result, to me, of overly fleshed out settings where every single NPC has been given backstories, links to other NPCs, intrigues, etc. Again, looking at, all of the different NPCs in the various towns and shops and Mages Guild, and everybody knows everyone, and so-and-so's son is, part of the Mages Guild, and his parents are really sad because they wanted him to be an adventurer like their dad, and, this guy...
Everyone has a dark secret.
Yeah, or so-and-so is in love with this person who's the wife of someone else, and this other person is jealous, and it's like, oh, you almost immediately went away from what you said you were going to do. I do think they attempted to pull back from that several issues later with the various parts of the world that they stated were going to be left permanently blank, but there was just a really big problem to me with overcomplexity within the City League itself. And there was another section of the world, the town of Berghalter. It comes with a historical timeline of events of the town. All these NPCs detailed out. There's a secret cult. There's just too much in some of these places, and so there just seemed to be kind of a disconnect with what they said they wanted Pelinore to be and what it kind of turned out to be instead in certain sections of it.
Clear, concise, well presented.
And
Jim?
I disagree with you ever so slightly. I mean, your point is well taken, because they said they were going to do one thing and then they did another. But compared to the Gazetteers, this is nothing like the Gazetteers, where it's just freaking overkill of info dump of more than you would ever need to know to run some of the settings. It is a little wordy, maybe more my taste, but much more DM friendly for skimming and I'm having that out of it. Mike and I were talking, and I can't remember if you were. It was like last weekend or something. Mike and I were talking, and what intrigues me about Pelinore is where it sits in a continuum of settings that were going on at the time, where you had like standard basic D&D settings that were just getting off the ground, then the Judges Guild craziness, Gonzo, and then the even more Gonzo of West Coast D&D and Arduin. Like, Pelinore is sort of in between basic D&D and Judges Guild, to me. In funk level.
Yeah, this was before the Gazetteers.
Chronologically.
I think they started in 86 or 87. So, basically, at that time, Mystara was just the known world in the back of the expert rulebook, where each kingdom had more or less a paragraph. But yeah, there was Greyhawk, the Greyhawk box set was out. Forgotten Realms was, 88, 89? Something like. But anyway, yeah, I can see your point. There were other campaign worlds that went into a lot more detail, but I'm going to talk about that on my number 2. So, anyway, your number 2, Jim.
My number 2 is how culturally British this entire operation is, because you take the American approach to game writing for granted because we all grew up in it. But recently, Goodman Games licensed a Portuguese or Spanish language version of DCC, and they did a Kickstarter for that down in South America, and that came with some original new DCC modules that were being written by Brazilians, and those have a whole different flavor than the American DCC things, and Pelinore is a lot like that, where Pelinore reminds me very much of Game of Thrones, which, even though George R.R. Martin is American, he's based a lot of Game of Thrones on English history, like the War of the Kings and things like that.
100 Years' War. Yeah.
I mean, Pelinore, all these little bits and pieces and bobs that Liz was talking about are very proper, and everything's in its place, and there's just I'm trying to stretch to nail down the essence of what makes it cool. But it's cool because, I mean, like traditional medieval setting with no screwing around based in the British Isles, here's a whole setting for that.
Yeah, if you ignore the Freemen, yeah, it kind of gets to my complaint with some American fantasy campaign worlds, and it's not just D&D, the other games. The American view of, say, a medieval town is very much Little House on the Prairie in funny clothes. It doesn't feel medieval. It feels more like a frontier town.
See, thank you. You're going to say this much better than I was able to articulate.
And whereas these guys, being British, or even, I'm sure, any Europeans are probably in the same boat, they have a more direct experience that can give you more of that feeling of feudalism. Now, granted, a lot of Americans may not want that in their fantasy. They want a frontier town, and that's fine. Personally, I prefer a more feudal feel to my stuff. And I agree, it's right all over this.
Yeah, if there was a Scotsman on the writing team, I didn't mean to call everybody who wrote this British. Forgive me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, speaking of comparisons with other campaign worlds, my number 2 is the Knight's Ocular. That's kind of sort of secret police that kind of felt like the Black Lotus from Judges Guild City State of the Invincible Overlord. And
they kept them very vague, which I liked. You can make it whatever you want to be.
As
was
good
awesome.
Or as bad as you want them to be. You can make them a secret order of really good guys like the Harpers in fantasy or in Forgotten Realms, or you could make them, a Gestapo. And I also liked, on a side note, when they were dealing with how they associate with the Order of Heralds, which in Pelinore is not just people who identify rankings and everything. They're basically lawyers. So your prosecutor that gets thrown to that Otyug might very well be a member of the Order of the Heralds. So, I like that. I like that part, the way it was set up. You've got some familiarity, but you put some good twists on them.
And the Otyug is like, oh, he smelled of summer meadows. He was fantastic.
he smelled wonderful, tasted delightful.
It was delicious.
With a nutty finish.
All right, Liz, take us over to number 1s.
Okay, my number 1. There is a group, basically they are a child gang called the Basilisks, and I thought they were pretty darn well done. They're a fun concept of the ubiquitous, Oliver Twist style child gang, and they're not just, cut purses, thieves. They do a little bit of everything. I guess they're kind of like a cross between the Oliver Twist, pickpockets and Sherlock Holmes's Baker Street Irregulars.
Oh yeah.
They work as spies too. Taking advantage of the fact that nobody pays attention to kids, and so they lounge around unnoticed in places, and people tend to ignore them. So I really liked the makeup of the Basilisks, and even the leader of the Basilisks is he's older than the others, but he's still, from the way they describe him, he's kind of like a teenager. He moved up in the ranks, and, now he's in charge. They really don't have, they don't take a lot of orders directly from adults.
There's no Fagin.
Yeah. Or if there is a Fagin, he's only a little bit older than the rest of them. Okay. And I think he does try to, keep his kids, doing well, and he wants the best for his gang.
Okay. All right. Jim?
I just want to retire from this episode and listen to Liz talk, because she's really kicking it this time. Oh, I had it right in front of me. Well, back to just American-style murder hoboing your way through an adventure. My number 1 favorite thing in all of this, because settings are not my cup of tea anyway, is the idea that one can earn money by going out and capturing monsters to be used in those gladiator matches in the court system. You can go make monster money, and the whole challenge that would present to a bunch of murder hobo PCs, because they can't go out and just kill the werewolf or kill the hill giant. They've got to go out and figure out a way to catch him alive and drag him back to town. I thought that was...
Go ahead.
Man, that reminded me so much of Mead when I read that part.
Oh yeah, her
She's
Brid.
always trying to capture. Yeah, Brid's trying to capture monsters and take them back. Don't kill it.
I mean, you know how I was talking about you could skim Pelinore and find lots of great stuff to grab? I did grab that one. I'm like, okay, I'm having this right here. This is the best idea ever.
Becomes a whole different game when you're trying to take the monster alive, or at least only moderately damaged. Okay, well, we've inferred about it a lot throughout the top 5, but I'm going to say my number 1 favorite is the very first article. They said what I've always thought about campaign worlds. They said the problem, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was right at the beginning, the problem with most campaign worlds is that they are so detailed that there is nothing left for the DM to detail. And Pelinore was intentionally set up to be a world where there's always plenty for the DM to do. Now, as Liz noted, there are times when they may have stumbled on that path, but I think the intention was still there, and they set up a couple of whole territories, our castle and one other, where they said in the magazine, we will not write about anything here, because this is for you to make for your campaign in Pelinore to make as you see fit. And I thought that was an absolute awesome way to do a campaign world. And that's my number 1. Ta-da! So that's Pelinore.
Well stated.
And unless we have any other final comments, let's move into random encounters and talk about the gods of Pelinore.
How many people want to kick some ass?
There are 7 ogres surrounding you. How could they surround us? I had Mordenkainen's magical watchdog cast. No, you didn't.
Satanic fungus rises from the forest floor and says, "You're playing D&D. You're playing D&D. This whole apartment is playing D&D."
Random encounters.
The gods of Pelinore. Actually, we did random encounters. We were going to do monsters, NPCs, or gods, and we just ended up all choosing gods. So we'll be talking about our favorite gods. And Pelinore has a few that are, quote-unquote, I hate to say real, accurate mythological characters, like John Barleycorn.
Historical.
Yeah, historical. But there's a lot of made-up ones, too. So,
John Barleycorn must die. That's what I heard.
Well, of course he does. Until next year. But anyway. All right, well, let's start. We'll let Jim start us off this time.
Start with the weak knees this episode. I did pick a god that I'm just in love with because I'm an evil bastard DM and I'm thinking of the things I could do with him. And of course he doesn't have a name that's easily pronounced. It's spelled Csthenkees. Looks a little Greek. I'm going to go with Synthenkes.
Riboflavin Fingelflower.
Synthenkes, who is the god of despair. And he only has first-level clerics, so you can't even get a heal off his clerics because they don't have any spells. And his whole deal is, life is, screwed up, you're going to die, and it's probably better off just to go ahead and do it now. And
wow.
He's kind of like Crom. He's not a helper deity. And I could just see myself populating, making this the city religion or something, just making masses and masses of these guys for the players to interact with and go, okay, we need to get healed. Which temple to go to? Here's the nearest one. Okay, we want to heal. Sorry, you should just.
We don't do that.
You should just take your damage like a man. Very like Crom in the Conan
Go out
books.
in despair in your pain and be thankful, because you got to be thankful.
Oh yeah, I would totally play the clerics and the priests like Despair in the Sandman comics. You know.
Okay. Well, is there any other advantage to being a cleric of his, or is that all the info that's given?
Well, I mean, all of these are kind of brief, but yeah, that's the bottom line. He only has first level clerics.
Okay. So if you're going to be a cleric of this god, you got to commit.
Sorry, it was random encounter, so I just went for the thing that I thought would screw with the players the most.
Wahaha! You have to make a cleric for your party, and it's got to be of this god. Ah-ha-ha. And since you don't get any spells at first level anyway at classics, so you're really kind of... I'm a cleric, but I have no magic at all.
But here's a fish hook you can just randomly drag through the flesh of your own body.
You're welcome. Okay, well, Liz, who did you choose?
I chose the god Mordrin. And he is a god who has been forgotten, and an evil priestess has begun to start worship of Mordrin again now, but she has perverted what the god stands for.
Yeah.
So basically, this priestess discovered some manuscripts talking about this forgotten god Mordrin, and it kind of gives the impression that, she has legitimately misunderstood what the manuscripts say, and something talking about, giving your heart, she's translated to mean that, it's kind of like an Aztec sacrifice. You take the living heart of someone, out as a sacrifice.
So you have a lawful deity that's being worshipped as a chaotic deity.
Yeah. He used to be, a god of love and, charisma, but this evil priestess is, starting up a new religion with him as an evil god. And she's got this, she basically, if anyone is going to try to restore Mordrin to his true self, this evil priestess is going to become your enemy and try to stop you.
So wait, a whole religion that worships a god that expresses nothing but kindness and loveness, but they use it as an excuse to commit atrocities and go to war?
Right. And,
that never happens in real life.
Yeah, no one is around who remembers. However, Mordrin is manifesting himself in the town as this old man. And he's, wandering around, very weak, diseased looking, and he's just waiting, for a cleric who will, take him on.
And worship him correctly.
Right. It's like he doesn't want money. He wants the cleric to restore the true religion of Mordrin. And says if anyone will listen, he'll relate the story of the twist that his worship is taken, but he will not tell you that he's actually Mordrin. He's this old man who is trying to get a cleric to restore the true faith of Mordrin. But you don't know that it's Mordrin asking you this,
right.
And that's kind of the test.
Mm-hmm.
Says, but if someone mistreats this old man, he'll appear again the first time that person is alone and lay a curse on them. And they'll be left with an effective charisma of 3.
Ouch.
Woo-hoo.
So, yeah.
Well, that's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight. Losing my religion.
So that's my guy. I thought he was a very nicely tragic character, and there's a good opportunity there for PCs to bring him back to what he's supposed to be and fight an evil priestess along the way, and do some really cool stuff there.
So we've got the god of despair who doesn't interfere in the prime material plane under any circumstances and won't help you. A fallen god who probably can't help you. Mike, what cheerful god did you pick?
The graveyard deity. Anjura.
Woohoo!
Now, they're not necessarily evil. This clergy takes care of graveyards and handles funerals, usually beside the deity of whoever, the deceased worshipped, their cleric, but they're there too. They're basically like funeral directors. And donations to them ensure good funerals, good, proper treatment of the body, the gravestone, the tomb, or whatever. And this was pretty cool. It's like a god of death, but not evil. But here was the best part. This is what cinched me on this god. Part of the services they provide is the option, if you pay enough, to have your body burned on a pyre with all your belongings and your loved ones. However, with an additional payment, they will provide substitutes for the wife or husband or concubine or whatever to be thrown on the fire in lieu of the actual loved one.
How civilized.
Wow.
Indeed. I thought that was great. You can hire a substitute.
I'm kind of getting this impression the old guy has in his will that he wants to be burned on the pyre and he wants his loved ones to be there with him. He dies. He pays the money to have that done. Then, after his death, the wife is desperately paying more money to the same people to get a substitute for herself so that she does not have to be the one on the pyre after all.
Yeah, it's like the old Indian, as in Indians, concept of widows being thrown on the pyre, though at least it is equal opportunity gender, because it does say wife or husband.
Well, it's Viking too, right?
Oh, yeah, that too. But you can at least buy your way out of it, apparently.
Sorry, you mailed him. You're getting on the funeral barge with him.
Yeah.
So that was my deity. I thought that was cool. So you can see there's at least 3 awesome deities to be run either in Pelinore or stolen for your own home campaign. And then, I guess, any other comments on the deities of Pelinore, or shall we move into products?
I think we've done more than enough.
Yeah.
We've scared our listeners more than enough. Okay, on to products of your imagination.
In new Dungeons & Dragons, power is won by finding new ways to battle.
I can feel the darkness inside me!
And being completely dragon-flapping awesome.
Set comes with spellbook, ritual rites, playboard, sacrificial dagger, and dice!
TSR Hobbies, Dungeons & Dragons game. Products of your imagination.
Poi! This is going to be an odd one, because we're going to give a link to the PDF that's a compilation of all the Imagine Magazine articles of Pelinore, which comes out to about 60 pages. Though I think the last 10 pages of that is a module.
That everybody should go immediately download so you can read it and disagree with us viciously via email.
Absolutely. Or voicemail. Imagine Magazine is available on Internet Archive, archive.org, if you want to go and read them, quote-unquote, in the manner in which they were originally intended. After Imagine Magazine was canceled, the guys who came up with Pelinore actually continued it on in a publication called The Game Master, and it expanded Pelinore a bit. I don't know if it was too much. We didn't have access to that. We were just concentrating on Imagine Magazine. But that went on for 5 issues and then was canceled in turn. Don't know if that's available anywhere. But anyway, this is going to be hard for you guys to judge format and stuff because it's, articles out of a magazine that just happen to be jammed together. There's no cool back images for you to complain about. So, over to you guys.
Well, I don't know who the person was who was drawing the maps.
Oh my lord, the maps.
They were awesome. I loved all of those maps and the layouts of the buildings, the schematics.
I do know when they went to Game Master for those 5 publications, they used the same artist. I don't recall the guy's name off the top of my head, but he did continue in the additional work.
Oh, man, he was awesome sauce. It was just...
Yeah, I heartily agree. I mean, beautiful, hand-drawn, hand-lettered. It's like you look at these maps and you go, well, I didn't know a map could be this good. They would work. You could publish them today.
Okay.
I mean, they're magazine articles. In that regard, it's the typeface it's bland, it's utilitarian. The artwork, the hand-drawn cartography and calligraphy, they are what make this just an utter thing of beauty. And, push it over the edge from just being a boring-looking magazine article. It's like, wow.
Is it on graph paper?
Hey, a lot of the maps are on the hex graph stuff.
Oh, cool.
So,
cool.
There you go.
But generally, no.
Okay. I loved it so much. However, to not be a total fangirl, I will also say there are some occasional typos, some errors that were not caught during publication. There was an occasion where NPC changed his name changed within the same article, caused a little bit of confusion for me. So, it's not all sunshine and roses, but it's beautiful. The pros far outweigh the cons, in my opinion.
Okay. Jim?
Oh, I would just agree and reinforce everything Liz said. I mean, as far as layout goes and font choices, I mean, it's nice standard magazine, clean standard magazine layout for the day, and, obviously comparable with Dragon Magazine of the same year and time. Nice clean columns, nice font choices. As you noted, no annoying, background watermarks.
Okay.
Maybe a little, there's not a great deal of straightforward fantasy illustration. I mean, there's some, illumination of the maps that's nice, but maybe it could have benefited from that, but the maps are so damn gorgeous.
Well, and of course, since it's a compilation of articles, it doesn't quite have the same flow as, say, a gazetteer would have with, section to section when it was intentionally built as one whole piece. But beyond that, I found it very readable. To disagree slightly with Liz, I will say that while the NPCs in the City League did seem to be really intricately connected to each other, I did not find any of those that were plot specific. One of those, if you didn't follow this, it doesn't cause a domino effect that will wreck, plots all down the line if you're using the city. Maybe they're there and I just missed them, but I never got that feeling from some of the details.
I will agree with that. You could, I think, safely ignore all of the extra folderol that came with a lot of them.
Okay. All right, well, shall we give it some dragons then?
Wow, it's been so long I forgot we did that.
Okay, we'll start with Liz then.
Alrighty. This was a pretty cool little world here. Despite the things that I've said that bother me, again, the pros far outweigh the cons, and there's a lot that you can use. You can either take it all, you can easily just take a little, and it's not. Very few bits of this are so setting specific that they would look weird being dropped into somebody else's campaign world in part, which I think is, a very strong selling point for it as well. I'll give this 4 out of 5 dragons.
Okay. Jim?
It's real solid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to rate it for what it is, even though these kinds of things are not, not my cup of tea. But for production value, content, and content. Let me say that over again. For production value and content, it's a solid 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Everybody should get it and go look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's free. Why not? Kind of hope that the creators of Pelinore are listening to this show, and of course they are.
Well, you never know.
Would consider Kickstartering, to republish it. I think that'd be awesome. Just a thought.
All right, well, let's do this right. Somebody, even if the original writers aren't listening, somebody's listening who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah, get the word out, guys. Because I'm going to beat everybody and give it a 4.5.
Ooh.
This is almost precisely the sort of campaign setting I love. A good framework, but enough detail on the insides that I can make it my own.
And historical references that don't drive you insane. In their wrongness.
That too, yeah. So that should be average 4.2 maybe? 4.15? Something like. 4 and a smidge.
12.5 divided by 3 is 4.16 continuing decimal.
Yeah. 4 and a smidge.
Hooray!
I hope we've at least piqued the listeners' interests in Pelinore and willing to go take a look at it. There were some forums for Pelinore on the Piazza. I haven't been there in a few weeks, and there was talk maybe of shutting it down. I hope they didn't. There are fan sites out there that are for Pelinore. It was Pelinore, the Pelinore fan site, the official one, that was going to get shut down, not the forums at Piazza. But there's plenty of stuff out there. Kelry was able to compile this huge amount of fan-based stuff that you can use. I haven't looked at it, but if 60 pages isn't enough for you, you still may have some more stuff you can roll into it. And hope you take a look at it. Meanwhile, we're going to head down the dusty road of gamerdom, looking into the future. And how are we heading down the road, Jim?
I'm jumping on my ship and sailing straight to the edge of this flat world to see if it gets me to the astral plane or not.
Woohoo! Well, you'll find out one way or the other. And Liz?
If I pack a ring of flying, I don't really care what happens to anybody else.
Or a deck of many things. You got some good odds there.
I am going down that road with a weak old man who seems to need my help, and I might be able to do something about that.
Yeah, that's very lawful of you. Well done.
I thought so.
Yeah. Well, I'm heading down the road, and I'm kind of picking up my pace because I'm about to start my new job as a prosecutor in the City League.
Chan chan.
Da-da. With funeral costs covered. Which reminds me, Liz, I need to talk to you about the funeral arrangements.
Ah, do you now? I think we might be having a disagreement here.
They provide a pyre and everything. It's awesome.
They'll leave a pyre on for you?
That's right.
Oh, Lord.
And that's a wrap, and we'll see you guys at 127.
Bye.
See ya.
Pre-arc. And that's that.
The Saber Die Podcast is a production of Wild Games Productions in association with D20Radio.com. The Saber Die theme music is provided by the band Mississippi Bones. You can find them at MississippiBones.bandcamp.com. Promotional consideration for tonight's episode was provided by Summer Meadow, the elven fragrance best used on a Midsummer Night's Eve. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Save or Die.
John Barleycorn must die. They've plowed, they've sown, they've harrowed him in.
So you could hear that, right?
Yeah, mostly. I still can't. Can you understand his name? DM something?
Let me play it again. DM Appleseed.
Appleseed. Okay. Guess we'll go from there.
You know, he's going across the American frontier planting little D20s.
Or he's a one-eyed robot with fins. With rabbit ears. Oh, wait. Anime reference, sorry.